is. Now, our top story today, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner flying from Ahmedabad to London crashed shortly after takeoff on June the 12th, killing 275 people, making it the world's deadliest aviation disaster in over a decade. On June the 13th, India's Aircraft Incident Investigation Bureau launched a full probe supported by the US National Transportation Safety Board. Both black boxes located in the jet's front and rear were recovered and flown to Delhi for analysis. Investigators were able to extract data from the forward unit, providing crucial clues about what happened in the final moments. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch has now released a preliminary report into the crash. Let's take a deeper look into this. Now let's have a look at the further details of what this report says. As we can see by the information released today, engine 1 and 2 fuel cutoff switches were moved to immediately cut off after takeoff, just after reaching 180 knots indicated airspeed. Both engines' fuel cutoff switches transitioned from run to cutoff. This action shut off fuel supply to the engines and led to a rapid loss of thrust. This is highly unusual and not part of any standard takeoff procedure. Investigators are now focused on whether this was caused by a mechanical fault, pilot error, or electrical system anomaly. Now we move on to some more information. We have communications between the pilots now. Pilot-to-pilot confusion was captured on the voice recorder, the cockpit, in the cockpit, which captured a moment where one pilot asked, quote, "Why did you cut off?" And the other replied, "I did not do so." This exchange points to miscommunication or a potential inadvertent system input, possibly by accident or malfunction. We cannot confirm this as of yet. Neither pilot claimed responsibility for this action. Now, the Ram air turbine deployed for emergency power as both engines lost thrust and the plane began descending. The Ram air turbine was automatically deployed. This is a small propeller-driven turbine which generates electricity, hydraulic and electrical power to keep vital systems like flight controls functioning when both engines fail. Relight attempts were made. Only one engine was partially recovered. The pilots tried to relight both engines by quickly switching the fuel cutoff switches back to run. Engine 1 showed signs of recovery as its core deceleration reversed and exhaust gas temperatures rose, indicating combustion. Engine 2, however, failed to stabilize and continued decelerating despite repeated fuel reintroduction. Thrust levers found at idle, but data shows takeoff thrust was engaged. Post-crash investigations found the thrust levers in the cockpit at the idle position. However, the flight data recorder indicated that takeoff thrust had been engaged, suggesting the engines failed to respond properly, likely due to fuel starvation, not pilot input error. However, we cannot confirm or deny these claims, as this is a preliminary report, as we said. Flap handle position was consistent with normal takeoff. The flap handle assembly used to control wing flaps for lift during takeoff was found in a standard takeoff configuration. This indicates that takeoff was initiated correctly, ruling out flap configuration as a contributing factor to this crash. Now, the fuel sample tested was clean with no contamination detected. Investigators tested fuel from the aircraft and the refueling source, However, no contamination was found, confirming that fuel quality was not a factor in the engine failures. This is the findings from this report that was just released today. No recommendations have been issued to Boeing or GE yet. At this stage, the AAIB has not issued safety recommendations to either Boeing or GE, the engine maker. This implies there's no clear evidence of a design flaw in the 7878 aircraft or the GE Gen X-1B engines, though this could change as more evidence is reviewed. Now, engines were relatively newly installed at the time. The left engine was installed on May the 1st of last year, and the right engine was installed on the 26th of March of 2024. That this suggests that both engines were in their early life cycle and well within operational timelines, minimising the likelihood of age-related mechanical failure. Now, the next major check was due in December of this year, but the aircraft was not due in for its next major maintenance check until December of 2025, indicating it was well within its scheduled service period and had not missed any major inspections. Now we're going to dive into this in a lot further detail. We're joined by two guests today to discuss this. Vandana Singh, who's an aviation expert, he joins us live from the Indian capital, and we're also joined by Wing Commander S. Sudhara Khan, who's also an aviation expert, joining us from New Delhi. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Vandana, I wanted to start with you. We've obviously just given a lot of information about the details which this report has in it. However, what is it important for the public not to jump to any conclusions, and what can we make from this report so far? Just briefly.
Firstly, thank you for having me on your show.
Of course.
As we just spoke, this is the preliminary report that's come out. What is important that it's come out on time, within a month's time that was promised. The preliminary report is out, and the initial findings are already coming in. It is also clear that the pilot 1 is asking pilot 2, or is it the pilot 2 asking the pilot 1, who has cut off the fuel switch, and it's a negative from the other side. So this is also clear that that has not been tampered with. So I don't really see a pilot error over here. Of course, a lot of other factors have already been taken out, be it fuel contamination, be it bird strike, be it XYZ. But a point that I have always been talking to various channels and to yourself also right from the beginning, that I see that the FedEx needs to be examined, which is the full authority digital engine control operating system of the 787 Dreamliner needs to be examined and investigated into full detail, because that faulty miscommand from that can lead to a dual engine failure. And that's the reason why suddenly there was no power, there was no thrust, there was no nothing, and the pilots themselves were baffled. So was it the faulty sensors? What happened to the switches? All of this is something that one has to get into the bottom of it. And none of the stakeholders can be spared out right now, because all the stakeholders are in. There is a response that has to be given to all the human lives that have been lost.
Yes.
It's a global tragedy. It's a national tragedy. And for a Dreamliner 787-, it's the first major tragedy that's happened of this aircraft. So therefore, a lot of questions need to be answered over here. And it is pertinent to see that there was an advisory that was taken out on December 17th, 2018 regarding these switches. And 7 years hence, why there was no seriousness given to that? Why were the checks not done in a proper manner? Why was it not looked into? These are the points that one has to really go into, because this has to be taken very seriously. At the end of it, it's a human life at stake, and so many lives are already gone. So I do hope that as we do go deeper into the investigation and the findings start coming out, that they will examine the FADEC, they will examine the electrical software malfunction glitch that could have triggered this. I think all of these factors need to be looked into before coming to a conclusion. Right now, only the first findings are in.
Of course.
Over to you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. We're also joined by Wing Commander Sud Hakaran, who joins us from New Delhi as well. Wing Commander, thank you very much for joining us on the program. As we've already been told, this is the preliminary report, so it's very important not to jump to any conclusions here. However, what do you make of this report, and what information are we still waiting for?
Let me quickly tell you the broad aspects of what has come out in the report. So before, on the day when the accident happened, we talked about 3 plausible reasons as to why this could have happened. One is, of course, the main reason being, why did the engines lose thrust? Because something has happened to the engine which could potentially be explained by a bird strike. Now today, that has been taken out, right? So there are two other reasons now that comes into the mind, which is action within the cockpit by one of the pilots or both the pilots, number one. Or two is about a software electromagnetical mechanical failure because of which this happened. Now, if you look at the sequence of action from the takeoff, which is T0, to the time which is around 32 seconds from then on, that's the point of interest, because 15 seconds before, everything was perfect. The aircraft has attained a maximum speed of around 170 odd knots, which is what enabled the aircraft to take off. So till that time, everything was perfect. Now, 3 to 4 seconds into the takeoff, one pilot suddenly sees that the fuel cutoff switches have been flipped to cutoff state from the run state. Now, see, mind you, there are 2 engines and there are 2 independent fuel cutoff switches. Now, it's very highly unlikely that an error happens in both the switches at the same time, because the aviation design, because being an aeronautical engineer, I can tell you that we don't operate on the philosophy of a single point of failure, because there is no single command which controls both the switches. These are independent channels which is acting in redundancy, so that even if it happens due to some reason, there is no single point of failure in such a design, because that is vetted, and that's why this aircraft has been absolutely incident-free for the last 10 plus years. So that's point number one that you need to keep into mind. So now we have a state wherein both the switches have gone from run to cutoff. This is where, by the time it has reached a maximum altitude of just about 625 feet, I have to put another angle to this, because this change in state has just happened at a very critical time. This is to be noted. Keep this in mind, because whatever has happened, somebody knew that this is the time where the aircraft is at its peak of its vulnerability. Had it happened 15 seconds later or a minute later, the aircraft would have achieved a certain height, wherein even if both the engines would have failed, the aircraft could have glided and landed. So which means somebody didn't want that to happen. Somebody, in the sense, it could be a machine, it could be a human, right? Let's keep it at that. The second point is when the pilot, there is a clear evidence which says that one pilot asked the other pilot as to who flipped this, and the other pilot responded by saying no. Now, can I take this statement at face value? No, I will not take, because today there are lives of 200 plus people. There is a major accident that has happened. It could be an instantaneous, spontaneous reaction, so we will keep it by the side. But this is again very important, that one pilot has, so it is only one pilot who is absolutely clear, because he's asked this question, because if you had done it, you wouldn't have asked. The third point is, because this has happened, and the other pilot immediately has flipped it. He has not gone to fight, but he has just tried to, rescue the situation. So the switches have been flipped. And one engine has been half relit and the other didn't relight, which means that the required thrust at that level for the kind of payload that it was carrying, it was not able to achieve, and therefore it was of no consequence, and then it started losing height at about 900 to 1,000 feet per minute. And then since it was at around 625 odd feet, there was no way that that flight could have survived. So what we know is the change of switches. Now, can there be a software, electromagnetic or a mechanical failure? The answer is 99% no. Why? Because it is operated by a physical, a lever operated, because this is the only component wherein Boeing has not automized it. It is very clear. The ICAS and the FedEx has not stepped in because it has not been, there is no warning that it is issued. So if ICAS had given a fire warning, then the fuel would have got cut off. There would have been a warning that would have come. Now, if the pilot has intentionally switched off or changed the switch position, then the ICAS wouldn't respond, because the superior element in the cockpit is the pilot's brain. And if the pilot has opted to switch this, the ICAS wouldn't respond. It cannot give an overriding warning over the pilot, because at the end of the day, ICAS stands to lose nothing. That is the philosophy adopted by the designers. So here, this action has happened from the cockpit. Why? Because these levers, and both levers, see, one can go off. There can be mechanical failure in one. Now, exactly during a very crucial juncture of 4 seconds, exactly during that period, if we are flipping things, then that calls for, we have to magnify it, and then we have to look into this. Now, this is very, very critical, because this talks about a conspiracy angle, a sabotage angle from the cockpit. Now, this becomes the primary source, because there is no way that the aircraft can respond by itself during that corridor of 4 seconds. If it has happened, say, in the mid-air at a higher elevation, then the pilot has a chance to land back. Because somebody knew very clearly that this is the corridor that I have, if I have to do what I want to do, and this has happened. So this is of very great interest for me, these 4 seconds. No advisory counts here, because advisory is only something, it is not a mandatory thing. It is like telling you bought my lock, but then ensure that your door is locked. You can't keep your door open and say my lock didn't work. That's what an advisory is all about, right? So you can't blame Boeing's advisory for this. It is very clear that between that 4 seconds, there is something that has happened. Now, who did it? How did it happen, and why it happened? These are the questions that they need to find answers for in this subsequent part of the investigation. But today, if you ask me what is the pointer is sitting in the cockpit. Now, the answer is yes, I didn't do it. Now, how it happened? Yes, there is a plausible answer. There are other answers which I suspect. There are zero-day vector exploits that we can do, but I will not comment on that, because it still is a mechanically operated lever which doesn't have any control whatsoever from any software. Had the systems given the command and this happened, because that would have got recorded in any which way. There is no finding that way. So therefore, because Honeywell, which has manufactured these switches, they've been very clear that you need to take the safety lever off, then you need to push it, and then only does it go from one state to the other state, which means there is a mechanical action which has been involved there. Unless and until that lever also has an electromagnetic control, which is not the case. So that is why I am certain that there is something in the cockpit that has happened. We need to look at that angle. That's all that I can say right now.
Wing Commander Sud Hadakaran, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Your insight is greatly appreciated. Vandana, I wanted to move back to you. We've been told that this is an extremely unusual occurrence. We know why the incident happened. However, the reason why is not yet clear, and we do have to stress that. A possible plane fault, a pilot mistake, or a system glitch that switched both of these fuel switches to cutoff. In regards to errors, how unusual is this? And obviously what played a huge factor is how close, how soon after takeoff this incident happened. But how unusual is this incident to occur?
Most, I still maintain that there could be faulty sensors, that something is in the operating system itself that could have caused this glitch. But more will come out when we get to know exactly what happened inside the cockpit. Now coming to how unusual this is, yes, this is unusual, but definitely it can happen. It's not that it cannot happen. One needs to take all angles into consideration, and as I said earlier, all stakeholders need to be accounted for. None can be spared right now. We really need to look deeper into all angles that are coming out. This is just the preliminary report that has come out. More will come out. Do not forget that the incoming aircraft from Delhi to Ahmedabad, the same equipment that flew back, had a similar issue, that there was an electrical software malfunction on that aircraft as well. So what really happened at the Ahmedabad airport was that all corrected before all the green checks and the ticks were done by the pilot. All of that will also come out. So yes, I think we need to dig deeper, and more information will be coming out very soon. Over to you.
Indeed, Vandana. This voice recording of one pilot asking, why did you cut it off, and the other saying, I didn't. What does that reveal about the cockpit communication and also possible system errors here?
Well, in my view, right now it is coming out as confusion. Right now we don't know, was it the captain asking the co-pilot, or was it the co-pilot asking the captain? We really do not know, who was asking whom, but clearly the answer was negative. And I would go with that because I have a gut feeling that the pilots were not there to blame. There is something else behind it. And I'm still going on the electrical software glitch, and that the FedEx needs to be examined, because any faulty sensors, anything, can overwrite it. So yes, we need to dig deeper into this, in my view. Over to you.
Vandana Singh, thank you very much for joining us.